Got lots of papers.
Not kidding.
Need the suitcase to carry them all.
We're on? All right. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:02 on September 1st. I'm Stephanie Slish. I'm the chair of the planning board. Do we have I don't think we have a alternate chair right now. But I've got Bob Wagner here, Mike Pajek, myself, Jimmy Tarr, and Paul Dostal all the way at this end. And we've got our administrative assistant, Gerard Bueno, here as well. Thank you all for joining us. Our first item on the agenda, as always, is public forum. If anyone is here in the audience tonight or here online, would like to speak right now for public forum because they are not a part of the agenda tonight or speaking for any particular hearing, please make your way to the front seat here. Introduce yourself in front of the microphone, and we'll do our best to answer.
My name is George Bucala. I represent the estate of Paul Duga. And why I'm here is we moved there's two properties right at abut Prospect Street. And we moved the property lines a little bit to give the house a little bit more frontage. And that's what I'm here for. I had the property surveyed, and I got the paperwork from Eaton with the boundaries and the print.
Is that something that we would put on the agenda?
This is an A&R.
Yeah. So I think you need to, talk to Gerard and get on the agenda because it needs to be on the agenda, so posted for the public to know what you're talking about. And then you'd kind of explain your situation, but it's approval not required. And then we'd, pending any issues, sign off on it. So
Now, can I give them the paperwork tonight, or?
It would have to be on for the next, you can give him the paperwork and he can hold on to it till the next meeting, which is October 4th.
Okay, so I'll come and see you during the week sometime, or?
Yep.
Okay.
My office hours at Town Hall, 8:30 to 4:30, Monday through Fridays.
Okay, then. I'll stop in then next week and give you the paperwork. And,
Yeah, you have the application.
yeah, I have everything right here.
Yeah. Great.
He put everything on a disc too. I don't know if you require that.
That's not required, no.
I know some towns require it.
No.
No. Okay. Very good. I'll see you next week
Yeah.
then.
Thank you.
All right. And we'll see you next month probably
Yeah,
then.
thank you.
Thank you. All right. Close public forum then. It is 6:04. The first hearing is scheduled for 6:05. So I'm just gonna slowly wait. Okay, now it's 6:05. Great. So this is a continued hearing on the Thayer property on King Street. We, just for everyone here, just to go over how public hearings work, we open the public hearing, the applicant then gives us an update on their project. We are able to ask some questions here, and then we ask for comments from supporters and then comments from opponents. And we ask that you direct your comments at us and not the applicant. And then the board will ask questions of the applicant or of any of the supporters or opponents, and then public hearing will then be closed. The board then discusses and then votes or votes to continue the hearing. So if we'd like to open the hearing, public hearing for the Thayer Project King Street, please come to the front here in front of the microphone and introduce yourself and talk about your project.
So I'm Linda Thayer, daughter of Walter Thayer, whose project it is. And as you know, that we applied for the special permit back in January and submitted a plan that was brought before the planning board. And there were a few things that we needed to go away and get. One of them was approval from the Conservation Commission, which we received last month. So we had engineers draw up extensive plans about the ecological impact, and there is none, but of the things that we want to do. That plan was approved, our engineers appeared, and the Conservation Commission approved that. So now we return to you with that approval. To the extent there's other things outstanding or things that you want to hear about, please let us know.
Mhm. Could you just go over a little bit of the plans just for the public, just the plans for the property and what you're applying for?
Yes, a special permit with site plan review is what we applied for. And the property is currently zoned for business, but in order to get the particular, in order to use it in the manner that they want, we were advised that we had to do the site, apply for a special permit.
Mhm.
And what they are asking to do is basically to use the property as an entrance and exit for the current business that's at 84 King Street. They are seeking a permit that would allow them to store natural materials that are either from the property or that they temporarily bring them in and take them on a job, and to store the existing equipment that they have. This is not a request to expand the business in any way. It's more to, and so I understand that for the special permit that we're seeking, and I apologize, the code is in our request and I'm not thinking of the code right now.
5.27 construction industry and suppliers.
Exactly,
Mhm.
and that's for storage of vehicles and construction materials, I think, is the two things you need a special permit for. So as you know, the history of this is that that's property belonging to Alfie Tatro, and my father, Walter, bought it in last year, and they started to and have improved the property. They took it over with some, some existing things on it, and some damage to the to the land that had been done by the prior owner, including the prior owner, Alfie Tatro, had dug out under the trees that are along the town line that border the road, making the trees actually dangerous and dying. And so one of the things that my father, and this is my brother, Richard there, and one of the things they did was to seek the approval of the tree warden, I guess, or the whoever in Hatfield that looks at the trees. And he inspected the trees and said that they should be taken down, but that the town had no money to do it. So my father and brother took down the trees at their own cost, probably $3,000 all told. And so I understand that neighbors have requested that trees be replaced, that were removed. The trees were the town trees, actually, that were damaged or by the prior owner. So I think, what else do we want to do? Basically, we want to store the trucks, store natural materials. The building that's there, half a building is an existing building, just maintain the existing building. And anything else?
Install the drainage.
Oh, right.
that was
So-
approved.
Exactly. So in the plan before the Conservation Commission, as you know, as you may know, we asked at the last meeting, the property does border the wetlands of marsh. But the Conservation Commission, or the engineers that we hired, determined that it was the things where the setback is, or the 100-foot setback is.
Right.
And they're not going to disturb any of the, the property has a front area and a road that goes down behind towards the marsh area, and about a third of the back of the property is within the 100-yard buffer zone, 100-foot buffer zone. They are going to install a drain that has been designed by an engineer that's outside of the buffer zone, that will actually collect the runoff and absorb it into the soil, such that there's going to be no runoff into the marsh or to the wetland
Right,
area.
it was all approved by the. Conservation.
Exactly. The Conservation Commission also approved the small paved area in the entrance to the property, because that is also helps with erosion, and they have redirected stormwater that runs down the hill on King Street into the continue to go along the road down the hill into the existing town waste or stormwater drain that's at the bottom of the hill.
Mhm.
And so that was an improvement that they did, that the Conservation Commission and the engineers approved. Other than that, there's a bank along the back that the Conservation Commission inspected. That bank is going to be not removed, but just supported and molded. Enhanced because what you can't see from the road is there's actually a rather steep cliff on the back of that the previous owner dug away from the back that you can't see from the road. But in order to stabilize the hill, they approved some molding of the hill. It's going to be a berm or just a mound. And some plantings. There's going to be natural plantings and or grass. Right. The existing plantings that are all approved from the list of that the engineer put together and is approved by the Conservation Commission.
Right.
The area along the right-hand property is going to be the existing dirt that they took up, sifted, took out the cans, bottles, a couple of things that were in there, the leftover, some scrap metal and stuff like that. The piles that you see on the property now a lot were sifted, right?
Yeah.
So they were, it's the dirt that was on the property put into a pile, and then when they are allowed to continue work, they're going to spread that, which is now loam or good planting soil, along the back third of the property and plant grass.
Right.
Which will also help with water filtration so that any natural rain will not, it acts as a natural filter. They have put down some amount of paver, not paved road, but some amount of paver to reduce any dust from the trucks coming in and out of the property. No, and it's important to know that there's, like, as I said before, it's not an increase in the activity. It's the existing trucks, which used to come out, go in and out of 84 King Street, would potentially come in at 84 King Street and potentially exit through this property, or vice versa. At the end of the day, they might come in through that property and be parked on 84 King Street. But it's just expanding in the property, the existing activity, spreading it over 2 plots of land.
Good.
Do you have any other questions?
If you could just talk a little bit about the business and the hours that work and the volume of traffic.
Yeah, it's just regular working hours from 7 to 4.
Mhm.
That's our working hours.
And the number of vehicles that would go in and out of there a day.
You got what, 2 dump trucks and a trailer?
Yeah,
and-
right now existing, there's only 2 employees, myself and another guy. So if we're working out of the yard that day, it could be more. If we're not working out, we leave in the morning and come home in the afternoon. So depends on what we're
Sometimes you
doing.
leave the equipment there and you don't even
Right.
come in the afternoon. It's there for the next day.
Yep, just so the public and everyone knows the scope of the.
Yeah. The sound level is not going to increase over what's already there and what's already is within existing statutory
Bylaws, right.
bylaws.
Would you be working on the weekends at all, Mr. Thayer?
Not for somebody else. That's not, we usually don't work on weekends unless there's an emergency or somebody calls. Well, then we'd have to go. Right.
So mainly Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
They repair equipment on 84 King Street, which is an existing use. They wouldn't be repairing equipment on this property. Most likely, they're just housing it. And right, there's nowhere, the garage and all the things they use to repair equipment, it's on 84 King Street.
I know the rest of the board has the opportunity to ask questions after we hear from supporters and opponents. So do we want to hear from them now?
Sure.
All right, is there anyone in the audience, either virtually or here in person, who would like to talk in support of this project at 82 King Street? Can you come on closer to the mic, Mr. Labby? Thanks.
My name is Paul Labby. I live at 56 Bridge Street in Hatfield. And I'm not here speaking in behalf of, for the Thayers. I'm here personally for my own situation with Wally. I've known Walter Thayer for 60 years. I've done business with him for 50 years with my real estate business and my personal business. And if anybody in Hatfield should get a special permit to operate his business, Walter Thayer should get it. He's run a really nice, clean operation all his life. He's been a good supporter of the town. And over the course of the time that I've worked with him, it's been nothing but a great relationship. And when he leaves the project is done and done professionally. He takes his equipment, goes home, and doesn't leave it running for 4 hours in front of his business. He puts it back in the backyard where he should. And as they explained, it would be going in one way and out the other way. And I think it would be just a benefit for them and a benefit for the traffic that's going up the hill and on the top of the hill. And I'm all for saying you should vote to give Walter the special permit that he's asking for, and you would be the better for it, and you could go on with other problems that you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else here like to comment in support of the project? All right. How about comments from opponents of the project? If anyone here is in the audience that opposes.
I wouldn't say we're opponents of the project, so.
I know it's,
We're
it's either
neighbors.
it's one or the other with the
Yeah,
public hearing, which
we're
is
we're
kind of.
neighbors, we're not opponents of it.
Yeah, so I'm Sean Hainsworth.
I'm Tom Woodside,
So we're
63 King Street.
59 King Street, we're butters. So I just had a couple questions based on what was said earlier. The special permit is only for the storing of natural materials? Is that correct?
Well, I'll look at what exactly it says in our bylaws. Sorry.
Well, what they're asking for in their application too.
Right.
So you want me to read that?
Yeah,
I
you
have
read
it
that
up.
part,
The storage of construction materials and equipment and the parking of vehicles. To utilize existing buildings for storage of equipment, but those are utilize the existing buildings which are off of this site. So it's the storage of construction materials and the equipment and the parking of the vehicles that they have. And it sounded like from what they were saying that they're not planning on expanding that, but just having a different area in where they could park those vehicles, which both fall under that 5.27 in our table of use.
And what that says specifically is construction industry and suppliers, including open storage of materials and equipment.
Great. So in terms of processing of materials, that would be,
We have to ask.
Yeah, I think we have to ask what that, if there's plans for that.
yeah, are there any plans for
Mhm.
processing of materials? Sorry, you asked me to direct my questions to
Yeah.
the board. so, Yeah,
To the Thayers.
No, we're not gonna process.
okay. Yeah, so,
Let me just.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to jump in terms of the storage of equipment. I mean, you guys now currently store it in your back lot. Are you moving all of that equipment out, or some of the equipment is stored in that open yard, or what?
No, we're gonna keep the majority, 90% of it's gonna stay where it is behind my father's house.
Right.
The only reason we had all those trucks out there the other day is because we were blacktop in the backyard.
Gotcha.
All the trucks are back where they're supposed to be. We want them all in the backyard for the simple of power, for if we got a dead battery,
Right.
air for tires, fuel, all that.
That's where all
Gotta
that's
stay
stored
over
back
there.
there.
The only reason the dozer and everything's over there is because I don't wanna drive the dozer on the blacktop.
Sure.
So
Tears it up. Yep.
that's why all that other stuff is there.
Gotcha.
And we ran out of room.
Okay.
That's basically what happened.
Yeah, and I would say, we're not opposed to the project. We just are, so you've all read the letter that I submitted, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So I won't bother you with reading it again. I think, so in terms of the growth of the industry over time, so they obviously are doubling their footprint with this. And so what, I know you have no plans for expanding now, but with the additional space, there would be the potential for expanding down the road. So what recourse would we have if the business were to substantially increase over a period of time?
Depending on the conditions that are set in the permit, and then also you could, reach, if there's any sort of permit violations, if we put some sort of restrictions in that.
So will the
kind of way.
permit specify limits related to their current volume of business?
It could. We've mentioned that in past permits as conditions.
Okay, yeah, so that would be, we don't want to say no growth. Obviously, business will grow and expand according to, the requirements that are placed on them, but we would not, we want to put some kind of limit on a significant increase of business in the permit if possible. The other thing, I think the main concern that we have is currently just the appearance from our perspective, which has nothing to do with the lot. They've done a nice job cleaning up the lot. It's just before with those large trees, basically what you saw was the large trees. And it was a quote unquote farming lot, although we know that Alfie used it for all kinds of purposes. But what we're hoping is that, so there's a couple pine trees that will probably take a number of years to mature. I'm not an arborist. And then just some stones that have been put out. And what we'd really like to see is more of a natural screen so that the appearance is similar to what it was previously. So I think it's really just a question of we have a clear view of a clean construction lot right now, as opposed to a blocked view of a mess. So it was definitely a mess under Alfie, but we didn't see it. So that I think is one of our main concerns, is just trying to address with some kind of natural screening and something that I mentioned in my letter that won't take too long to mature, not 5-10 years for trees to mature.
Mm-hmm.
That's another concern of ours.
I mean, building on that, I think there's lots of examples in mixed use residential and business areas where businesses have been granted permits or grandfathered, where, the property owner will make some remediations for barriers for sound or for visual to the neighborhood, for safety, for a variety of reasons. Those are, can be seen in lots of places, lots of towns around the country, and certainly in Hatfield. I mean, Mr. Thayer's property is beautiful now, but his house, you can't, when we moved in 3 years ago, we couldn't see anything. He has a construction business. You would never know it, because he's done a great job of putting antique farm equipment and other things around it. Certainly, many of the trees have matured over the many years that he's been there. We don't expect it to look like that, certainly, but is there anything else that can be done so that it, it blends in with primarily a residential neighborhood up and down King Street?
Yeah, that's why it's an opportunity to have the butters notified for these types of
Right.
hearings to, voice concerns and make suggestions that would make it more amenable in the neighborhood.
I mean, for us as property owners, we don't have a business there, but we have a real estate value that we pay taxes on at a full tax rate for, the neighborhood that we live in. So, that's the concern that I have. Is our property going to be devalued over time or immediately by, being across the street from something you could see visually that's now a business like that, versus before it looked like a residential property.
Yeah, and so just two other quick points from my perspective. So I don't think this is an issue, but because I don't think the Thayers are going anywhere, but we don't want that permit to be transferable. We don't want some larger excavation firm to buy out and then have that permit. So I'm not sure if that's possible to say that the special permit is limited to the current owners. I'm not familiar with zoning law, but that's a concern of ours as well.
I want to build on that. There's one other thing. There's another open lot that the seller, Alfie, so, I believe it's still his lot. Yes?
The horse lot,
Horse
yeah,
lot,
which I believe is not a business lot. I think it's just a buildable lot, correct?
Correct.
That's-
If I'm, yes,
Yes.
It's owned as buildable, not as a business.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's
On rural residential.
Residential.
mhm.
Right.
Yeah, we don't want to see it go any further, clearly.
Right, like if that parcel, that we're talking about now wasn't zone business, then they wouldn't be here really today to talk to, it's the fact that it's zone business, they're allowed to have.
And the
I'll
only
talk
other
about
point I'll say is just that the structure that's back there right now is a total mess. I mean, the old thing that Alfie nailed together. And honestly, I don't have a problem if
On
they
that
want
lot?
to, on the lot, the old sawmill building.
Okay.
I don't have, honestly, a problem if they want to replace that with a structure that's actually built properly. So I know that they're not allowed to build a structure on the lot. That's less concerning to us, that they have a proper structure to store things than simply screening the view and making sure that it, in terms of as we mentioned, the hours of operation and noise for a residential neighborhood. But I'm not opposed to them replacing that building that Alfie built with something more reasonable.
That was a sawmill building?
That's what he used it for, yeah. And that's it. Those are my comments. Do you have any more comments?
Nope, that's,
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Is there anyone else here in the audience that would like to speak as an opponent of the project at 82 King Street? Or 84 King Street? All right, board, and ask any questions of
Well,
opponents, supporters, or the applicant?
Well, do we want, yeah, I'd like to just ask the Thayers if they would like to comment at all on what's been said, but, just in terms of answering any question that came up.
Yeah, I have a couple of comments. First, do you know if the special permit comes with any restriction on transferability it commonly, or is that would have to be something special written into the permit? Like, what is the common? Are they commonly go with the property, or do they commonly not go with the property?
It really depends. I mean, I think we recently, for example, adopted a special permit that was specific to the business and the current owners, because it was we had to vote to continue a pre-existing non-conforming use, and we felt that given the circumstances that it would be unique to that business owner that had come forward. So that is something that we can certainly do.
Well, here's something I would like for you to take into consideration is that my father's 82 years old. My brother is part of the business. He's the business basically now. And the existing property is currently titled in my father's name only. So if there were to be a situation where Richie ended up with the property or transferred it to Richie in a short period of time, or next week, or in a couple of years, or 10 years from now, I don't know. But I would ask the board not to put in there a problem for the continuance of the family business. And I would ask for that consideration.
We fully support that. We fully support being transferred within the Thayers. What we don't want is to sell it to Excavator or us or some third party. So, yeah.
I also know that the abutters have asked for some potential limits on the expansion of business. I'd like to say that, my father and brother have operated this business for 55 years at the same rate. And they've been trusted to maintain a same level of business, and that's what we have said that they're going to do. And I'd like that same trust from the committee when we're doing this permit. I mean, they're asking to put in down the road limitations, basically, on what we've shown and said we have no intentions of doing. And so I'd like that consideration. What was the other one? It's in terms of the screening of the property. They're willing to look into that but it's funny. They say they love the way what Dad and Richie have done with our current property, and that it's always looked nice. And they moved into a property that looks really nice. So I'm a little surprised that they don't trust that given time that Dad and Richie will make this property look just as nice. But it's on a timeline, or forcing it to do something on a timeline when that's not, putting in trees and vegetation and things like that. There's appropriate seasons to do that, or else it's not going to work. And they may think that, arborvitae or something looks like the farming community, but the pine trees that are there are actually what is the natural habitat of the property. So I'm just saying they have every intention of adding trees and things to the property to increase the shielding. I would also say that strip of land that's currently there is town property. And there's a process for our neighbors to go through and to submit an application to the town of Hatfield to put in trees on any town property. So the town of Hatfield could budget for trees on the town property. And they can file permit. You can do that up on your road too, and ask the town of Hatfield to put in trees to shield your view, if that's what you're concerned with.
All right, any other questions right now for?
I think Walter's got a question.
Oh, yep.
You want to stay there, Dad? We're going to stay this way.
Excuse me, I'd like to make a few comments. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think it's fair to have a board, your board, try or suggest, at their suggestions, try to reduce the value of my property. Now, the selectmen and your board, I think, are all pro-business, or Hatfield likes business, encourages business, but don't try to restrict what you do have. And that would be, if you put a restriction on my property where I can't sell it or to another construction company in the event that my son wants to retire, I'm gonna be gone. But the idea is, I don't feel that that's fair from a board or from a town. And by the way, that building there that I tried to fix up best I could, replace some boards so they wouldn't have to look at it, was built illegally there, 2 feet over onto my property. And so there was nobody complaining when Alfie Tatro did this. So, you know, let's have a little consideration, and I'm just appealing to the board to use some common sense in your judgments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that that's the balance. Like, the abutters have said, well, our improving of the property that we acquired has somehow devalued their property. I would argue that it probably improved it, because when they bought the property, they bought next to, and you all have driven past it, the leftover, remnants of what Alfie Tatro wanted to park there. So we actually improved your property values. Please don't devalue ours.
May I make a
Yeah.
comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, just quickly. So I don't think anyone's restricting the sale of the business. It would simply be that anyone who wanted to buy the business would have to negotiate their own special permit. What we're asking for is that this first special permit is limited to this owner, and then a future owner would have to negotiate their own special permit. And two, I don't want to get in arguments about property values. The point is now that we look down into a construction zone, whereas before we looked at trees. So that's our primary.
And trash.
No, you didn't see the trash.
You didn't see the trash.
Oh, okay. Because it was overgrown
It was
by
overgrown.
bushes and grass.
There's a wild-
Oh, right.
Oh.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, that's a pointless argument, but that's our perspective.
I mean, the other piece on selling the business, of course, people should be able to sell the business. It's America. The question is, and the question for the board, if I were on the board, I'd be looking at it saying, wait a minute, if a larger or aggressive company that doesn't have the same relationships and history that Thayer's had bought it and decided to do a lot more within maybe, depending on, you said the permit could be a wide open permit, then what is this thing gonna look like? 50 trucks a day going in and out, it's completely different than what they're talking about. That's a consideration certainly on the permit issue that you raised.
Okay, we'll accept a limitation that there's not 50 trucks parked on the land or 50 trucks.
That's a wide end of the
Yeah.
book, yeah. The spectrum is wide. That's what we're trying to get.
It's ridiculous.
All right. Is there any more, before we close the public hearing, this is opportunity for the board to ask some more questions to the applicant or any of the opponents, or?
We can do that once.
I just
we
want
We
to
do that
close
after
make
the
a
we close it?
comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Paul wants to make a comment.
Oh,
I'd
we
like to
can
make
ask
a
additional
comment.
questions.
I've spoken to a number of people that served on previous boards, Board of Selectmen, Planning Board. One member of the Planning Board served over 45 years. Was actually a competitor of Mr. Thayer's. And in his dealings with the town, there was never one complaint, not one complaint about the Thayer property up there or any of his business dealings within the town of Hatfield. To echo what Mr. Labby said, that he has always done an A1 job for, I've had them, I personally know of, my son had some work done at his property, a horse farm, and they were very satisfied with the Thayers and their project that they did for them. So I'd just like to echo those comments for other members of the board. There's never been any complaints, and I talked to several former town officials, and he's run an outstanding business for the past 55, 60 years that he's been here.
Any more public, we can still speak after, but any more public comment? Otherwise, we'll close the public hearing just to keep us moving. We still have opportunity to deliberate and have. And talk.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, public hearing is closed. Now it's the board deliberations and talking, and can still ask questions to applicants, opponents, and supporters.
Well, I've had the Thayers work on my property for 37 years that I've lived there. And I can only say that they've done an incredible job. When they put the sewer in for me, because the septic's failed on my property, they put in a line from my house at 59 Prospect Street over to the nearest sewer in front of the Polish Club. In doing so, they set it up so that every single one of my neighbors could hook into that line that I paid the Thayers a very, very reasonable fair price to put in. And they all have hooked up to that sewer line because of the great work that he did and his son did on my property, going down Prospect Street, across the pavement and into the sewer line in front of the Polish Club. I cannot reiterate what Paul or what either Paul said about the quality of workmanship, the honesty, and an example, a primest example of how they have been part of this community. We have good friends that live over on Plain Road. Their horse died on a Sunday. They called Walter. He came over with a backhoe on Sunday for free, dug a hole, buried the horse, and drove away. That's the kind of people that work in this town. That's the end of my comment.
So what I'd like to say is that the testimonials that have just been said, I think further reinforce perhaps the position of Mr. Woodside and Mr. Hainsworth, in the sense that the Thayers are indeed, outstanding members of the business community and the community writ large, and that I would be in support of a special permit with site plan approval tied to the Thayers and their business, and not to the property necessarily. And here's the reason why: is we had a project out on West Street for trash hauling. We gave the permit at the time to the property, and to a local business, locally owned business. It was sold to a much larger organization who really should have come in to get a special permit and site plan approval reviewed for their purposes. They sort of ignored that, and they did not operate the business the way the previous owners did. They were not local, and they didn't have the care and the concern that a local business would. We have since actually reached agreement with them with a special permit and site plan approval for them themselves. And I trust now that we haven't heard much in the way of complaints, but we were getting complaints on a daily basis almost. The Thayers and what they're doing there is great. We can't just assume that that will be the case for someone who doesn't know Hatfield, doesn't know the neighborhood, but buys from the Thayers, and would presumably try and sell it to someone who you trusted, but you can't guarantee that. So the request that they then at sale come in for a special permit allows the community to then sort of revisit, okay, how are things going? Things have been good. We don't want to see this get expanded to 3 times what it was when the Thayers were there. That's why tying a special permit site plan approval to the Thayers, in my mind, makes sense.
Okay, I would just ask that you think carefully about how that's defined because,
Ownership, yeah, I understand.
well, my
Yeah.
nephew
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
also been in the family business. He's currently, a working union
Yeah.
construction jobs, but it's not inconceivable that he could return to work with my brother.
He's still a family member.
He's still a family
Yeah.
member. So while the business is currently Thayer and Son and the property is in the name of Walter Thayer only, please take that into consideration.
Yeah, and just the nature of kind of this business plopped in a residential neighborhood, I also feel like is another reason to potentially tie it to this current business as opposed to the property itself.
So I have a question though about the vegetation. We have this board anyway has consistently looked at vegetative screens on projects, particularly those that, because as you well know, in Hatfield, there's a lot of business zones intermixed within rural residential areas around town. It sort of memorializes historical businesses that existed many years ago when perhaps they were out in the outskirts of town and town has sort of grown around them. So it's not uncommon for us to require some kind of vegetative screening. However, even for our industrial and light industrial lot characteristics and setbacks, those vegetative screens are only required to reach a height of 6 feet within 4 years of installation. But you can't ask somebody to put in mature trees. I mean, we don't even do that out here in the town park. It's prohibitively expensive. And from what I understand, it's the risk of death of those trees is higher than growing something. And that's not to say that you put in a conservation, civilian conservation corps, tree that's about this big, but rather you put in something that's reasonable. I agree with the Thayers. I mean, arborvitae, they provide a pretty quick vegetative screen, but they're not native by any stretch of the imagination. They are not native trees. Rhododendrons are green all year. Pine trees, particularly if they're maintained and don't grow to the point where they're just a large trunk with treetop. But I would be in support of additional vegetative screening here. We require vegetative screening on almost all of the projects that we do, and many of those are, like the one we're going to review later tonight, is not only, that's within state-owned land along the highway there. I mean, it's not inconceivable to have you put in some small trees that would then grow, but at a reasonable rate. I mean, as I said, even for our light industrial and industrial, we're not requiring mature trees. We're requiring height of 6 feet within 4 years.
Well, I just want to comment and say, yeah, I'm not an arborist. I don't know anything about trees. I just put arborvitaes because we have some and we see some. So if the standard is 6 feet in 4 years, that's fine with us. So that's more my ignorance of trees and the way things work than anything else. We would appreciate the vegetative screen.
Yeah, and the notion of having an evergreen. I mean, look, the Wickles on the other side, their trees have probably been there for, 50 years. They're gigantic evergreen screen, and they hide everything that basically they have in the back of their business. You can't see anything, right? This is an example on the other side of the prospect.
Any other comments on maybe the potential of the noise on the site, the request there, or any other potential questions or concerns we have?
We're complying with the whatever, there are
Bylaws.
noise
Mhm.
levels in
Yeah.
the current permit bylaws.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
comply with those. We're fine complying with what's already in the bylaws.
I mean, typically we have required hours of operation within the special permits.
Those are also in the bylaws.
yeah.
Hours of operation,
Right.
which we comply with.
Everybody good?
I'm good. I'm fine.
Anyone want to make
I make a motion, we accept the Thayer's application for a special permit with site plan approval. for the 84 King Street property.
Any, with conditions of any kind?
No.
Any second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
I'm open for people to suggest conditions, but
I kind of agree with Bob on the conditions of getting ourselves in a situation where, because, you know, you all might not be around I don't know, like 30 years from now or something, and they do want to sell or retire. I don't know. I'm always, because then we have to deal with the problem then, and it was something we didn't even foresee if they were to sell it to a larger company. And given the fact that it's a business plot really plopped down in a residential neighborhood and near, honestly, a very, very sensitive habitat in the back with the pond, I don't think I could vote on it without any conditions. And also, I would think adding a couple of
what
extra
conditions?
trees or something like that, that would
What
be good.
conditions would you like to add?
I'm trying to think of
Well,
how we would term
I
it.
would think we would need to, you have a motion on the table
Yeah.
that's been seconded. We have to vote on that.
Okay, that was the discussion piece.
Well, we have to discuss it. I mean,
Yeah.
I I don't see where the arborvitae piece would come in if you have a tree belt and the town is responsible for that, for those trees. Why can't the town of Hatfield plant some new trees that obviously will take a while to grow, but why are we putting the town's problem that the Thayers have corrected, that Alfie messed up? Why are we putting it back on their shoulders?
That's a good point. I'm looking back at my notes of 8/20/2020, almost more than a year ago, and that the Phil Genovese, who is the director of Public Works, authorized them to remove those trees because I have in my notes that they were rotted and in danger of hitting the power lines. So at the direction of the town, they took down the trees.
So they probably would have to take them down at some point when they got too close to the power lines anyway,
And
maybe.
they did it at its own expense.
Right.
Well, that's
Well, they
the
could,
town's
but
responsibility.
they could plant trees within their setback, beyond the town line.
No, the trees were in the town.
No, not the trees in other words, at some point, that property becomes yours, right?
Mhm.
And there could be, out in the front there, right? At some point, the town-owned property only goes so far back. And then it's your property. So there could be some vegetation planted when it becomes like right on that property line.
Yeah, but the way it's shaped right now, the elevation changes are too drastic.
The way we took it.
And to put the trees down on the lower level makes no sense. You'd rather have them up on the higher level, closer to the road, where then they're more effective.
Yeah. The way we
Put it that
took it, and part of the reason why the trees were defective and rotting is that Alfie had carved all the way up to the town property and probably over onto it. So that there's the town property, and then it was
There's a 8-foot or 6-foot elevation change
right.
that got taken away. So we put a retaining wall in there to save the embankment,
Mhm.
and the trees already had gone by.
Right. We could put 5-foot trees 8 foot down, but I don't think
Yeah,
that would
it's-
solve the problem.
it's-
The only strip it left is town property.
If we really have to put the trees, or the town's gonna help us put the trees, well, then
It'd be
they
on
should
town
go
property.
on the town property, just over the line on the town property would be the most effective place to put the trees. So
Then we're
that's.
putting them on town property.
Hmm.
And,
They need a permit to put them on the town.
yeah,
Well,
and
I
then we
didn't
need to pay for that, but
Well, the town does have, I don't know if that's in a historic district. The town does have funding through the Community Preservation Act to put in, to replace,
Restore the trees. Well, that-
replace the shade
Okay.
trees.
we'll
Totally
commit
on
to
board with
applying
that.
for the funding to replace the trees, the town trees.
Yeah,
We'll do that,
Yeah.
and we'll wait for it to be
Yeah.
approved, and then we'll put in the trees.
Yeah.
We will commit to doing that.
that's fine.
All right, there's any more discussion on Jimmy's motion of approving without any restrictions.
Yeah, I think we should put some restrictions in
Okay.
regards of
So we'll have to vote.
hours of operation.
Mhm.
Well,
We adhere to
we
the
already
bylaw.
comply
What-
with
We
that.
comply with what's in the bylaws. Like, is it going to be more
Right,
restrictive
but we
than the
just, no, we
bylaws?
just have to,
No.
we just have to set it down in the document.
But under 5.27 and other operation, for the business, I'm sorry if I'm not quoting it exactly, but for when you're zoned business and operating under that, there's already hours of operation and other, and noise limits and a few other limitations.
So the question is that a redundancy for us to put it in there when it already exists in the
Right.
It's a redundancy if it's the same, but I would argue that you check because it shouldn't be more limited.
Well, we still need to vote on the motion that's on the table.
All right, all in favor of Jimmy's motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Wait a minute, this motion
This
is,
motion is just approving without any restrictions.
approving without any restrictions. Aye.
All, so those are 3 in favor, any opposed?
Nay,
I'd say nay too,
so it doesn't pass.
because we need 4 out of 5.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay. So now someone want to make a motion with restrictions or something else? And that's
Let's
pretty,
discuss the restrictions that we're trying to, that we,
I would say we almost always have restrictions with any sort of special permit. There's
Mhm.
usually at least one, like this is not like an out of the ordinary
I would call them conditions.
conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, conditions.
Well, I would suggest, and if we don't need to put this in a motion at the moment, that we consider a condition that the special permit and site plan approval for this project go to the current owners and the Thayer family, and not run with the property. That would be one condition. I have to say, I'm not sure about the regulations regarding building or actual operation, because we have many businesses that we have permitted over time that have had some odd hours of operation, even Saturdays and Sundays. We have one in particular that is allowed to operate up until 2 o'clock on Saturdays. So, I mean, I don't know if it would be unreasonable to condition the special permit to hours of operation being 8 to 5.
8
Yeah.
is late for.
No, I thought you said 8 to 4.
7.
7
Oh,
to
you
4.
said 7. Oh,
7.
7 to 4. Okay, so 7 to 5. I mean, I don't, you may be done by 4, but, 5 is a
Right.
reasonable time. And, even in, if there was offices nearby in a mixed-use development, they'd be open at least until
Does it
5.
need to be 5? I mean, they're frequently home by 5, but are people sleeping at 5? I mean, couldn't it be later? I mean, what if you
And
come
what
in
are-
at 6 or
the
7?
town-
Are we
the town
gonna,
bylaws already are
are
till
we
7, aren't
gonna
they?
get a stop work
Yes, I
if they're
think
at
so.
5:05? I mean, like,
What is the town bylaw right now?
what's reasonable?
about
What are we
time?
trying to prevent? We trying to prevent
I think
people
that's,
being
it's
woken?
not in the
12
zoning
hours,
bylaws.
Excuse me?
I don't
Yeah,
believe
7
that's
to
in the
7
zoning
is what I
bylaw.
think the town says, but I would like a copy of the bylaws because I could find it, but I got no service on my.
I don't have the town. I don't think I have a copy.
I don't think they're in the zoning bylaws. They must be in the town bylaws.
Separate set, but I
Yeah,
don't think I have a copy.
and I only have the zoning bylaws on. in front
Either
of
way,
me.
we're gonna conform to
Right.
what you have already on the bylaws, so. We're not working 24/7.
No, and they go to bed early, so
And,
they go to bed before our neighbors, so.
Well,
Yes, Mr. Thayer?
Yes, there has to be some common sense and some flexibility here.
right.
I mean, would you want me to come to your house to work there and then, I gotta stop at 4 o'clock. Well, you only got an hour or 2 hours more to finish it. We want to finish it, bring
In
the
daylight.
equipment home, oh, I can't bring it home because my neighbors will complain I'm bringing a truck in at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock.
Mhm.
No.
So where does that leave us
Yeah, I feel like,
Yeah.
in this pro-business community?
I would,
My apologies, I have to get my kids.
yeah, well,
Thank you very much.
I
I
think,
feel like given the size of the business, the hours might not be
well,
something.
especially if we are going to tie the special permit and site plan approval to the Thayers. I mean, there have been numerous testimonials tonight about how
Do have
you
a
know,
copy.
important the Thayers are to the community, and I agree and appreciate that. That's who those testimonials have been about. They've not been about somebody that we don't know at all, who, you know, could move in 10 years, who don't have the reputation or desire to have the reputation that you have.
we have
And I
no,
don't, and I would say, yeah, given the size of the operation, and like I said, if we keep the restrictions to just them, I don't know if we need to put hours on them. Like they said, there's only a couple trucks.
Well,
and
I think
don't
we're
know.
just,
Within the business, whatever's.
right. I'm just trying to prevent something like we've had
Mm.
complaints from people working at, you know, cutting logs at 11 o'clock at night or, you know, coming and going all hours of the night.
Correct.
And I know that they haven't done that, but I don't,
Right, but we also know that they've been very good, very good neighbors for a long time, and we have to trust them.
so,
That's what it comes down to. We have
And
to,
then like, how do you stipulate emergency situations where
Right.
they might have to go and do
No, I-
something at a random Sunday or something like that?
for example, they dig holes for most of the cemeteries in the town of Hatfield. Do you want them to not do that on a Saturday or a Sunday or,
No.
you know, after hours? I mean, that's one of their jobs for the town of Hatfield.
I'm fine with dropping that, but to Mike's point, we have to trust them. We're trusting them, which is why I think it's totally appropriate for us to have the site plan and special permit tied to the Thayers and their business.
I'll go along with that.
On the vegetation, I guess what I would hope is that we could say that to the extent that a vegetative screen on their property be installed. Now, I know that it may not be possible given where it is, but every effort be made to work with the town to enhance that vegetative strip. Because it seems to be out of their hands, but there may be on the area, like where you have the vegetation now and the rocks.
It's, the vegetation is out by the road, and
Right.
there's a strip of property from the edge of the blacktop to the property pin or the layout of the road. It's gotta be 25 feet wide that the town owns with a strip of grass on it that we're currently maintaining, and that's where the trees should go.
And is that where those rocks are that you put in and the palm trees?
There's one big oak tree that's sitting
Yeah.
there by the entrance.
Right,
That tree is a town tree. That oak tree is a town tree.
okay.
And it's on the town property by a good 8 feet.
So the other, but when I've been by the property a couple times here recently, there's some sort of monument stones out there now and.
Yeah. They would just keep in line, run parallel with the road, probably 20 feet off the road. Any type of planting a tree in there would be fine because the wires are on the other side of the road.
So is that your property?
No.
No,
That's
that's
town.
town's
That's town property.
That's where we're.
We'd also have to ask the town so they don't, are the wires on the
We'll
other
work
side?
with the
Well,
tree
we'll
warden.
work
with
with,
the tree.
if they require it, well,
Okay,
then we
that's-
can.
Yeah.
is
Work
it,
with the town.
is it actually the town's property or is it the tree belt?
It's the layout, yeah, it's the town's property. It's
It is
the
the town's
layout of the
property.
road,
Okay.
which is town property.
Okay,
Yeah, and which we're cleaning up and mowing and maintaining right now because it's like you mowing out in front of your house. You don't own all the way to the road.
No.
There's a layout.
We're
right.
not going to keep it unmowed.
Right, so why, but I mean, we're just trying to keep up the appearance. So if you want trees, well, then they have to go, that's where they should go.
One more comment.
Phil,
Yeah, another comment back.
Just one question.
Yeah.
So did the trees that were there, I heard that the town owned those, that they must have planted, the town of Hatfield planted them at
Yes.
some point many years ago, right?
Or they were on the
No,
lot.
Or they're naturally.
Just natural wild.
Sure, just like in the front of my house.
Right.
and you could see right through those trees. The only canopy, the canopy there would be the only buffer for sight.
Right.
But you could see between those trees anyway.
All right, okay, so any other comments or questions or thoughts on conditions? How's your reading over there?
I'm trying to find the noise thing, but
I would make a motion that we approve the site plan, the special permit and site plan approval submitted by the Thayers for the Thayer business. And it can't really be a condition of the, because it's sort of an awkward thing, but we can, with the sense of the board that you do what you can to work with the town and appeal to the town to deal with the tree belt.
I agree with that.
Absolutely.
So it's, that it's sort of hard to have that be a condition of the permit, but rather a sense, a sense of Congress, a sense of the planning board here that would be something that you would work with the town to do, because it is town-owned property. So it's part of what would have been the layout of the road, too.
Correct.
Mr. Woodside.
Just one last
Yeah.
comment, when the work started last summer, there was a lot of noise. Now, I understand that was because you guys are cleaning up the lot and all of that, so, in terms of hours, sometimes we're sleeping at 7. We have, work late at night, and we get up at 7:30 or 8, but, waking up with clunking traffic and tractors at 7 in the morning or 6:30, is that really fair? I mean, that's the question, but maybe they're not going to be doing that. It's trucks running in and out aren't that loud, but when there's a lot of dump truck noise and heavy construction equipment noise, that reverberates across the street pretty easily.
And yeah,
There's
technically,
another child at another home who's disabled. I mean, I don't know what their situation is. There's young kids in the neighborhood as well.
like the noise is not supposed to start till 7 in our noise ordinance and the bylaws anyway. So
Right.
it's any sort of noise that would go with the business isn't allowed usually until 7. So that would be in your right to complain to the zoning enforcement officer about that if that was an issue. But I understand your concerns around that. Also,
I'd rather not be a complainer.
Yeah, no,
Let them do their thing if, they're gonna take
Yeah.
care of the
I
business.
mean, I also have trucks driving by my house really early in the morning.
I have an
too, so.
enormous amount of trucks driving by my house before 7 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, you
Coming-
mean like Amazon delivery?
Oh,
Or
no.
FedEx ground?
Businesses actually in the
Amazon,
community,
For
actually.
example, they
No.
make like 10 stops a
Trash
day at some houses in
trucks.
the neighborhood.
I'd like to make
Yep.
a comment that this is Hatfield is a right to farm community.
That too.
And I think that the Thayers portion, they're not farmers, but they're minuscule compared to what is going on in terms of traffic in the town. I happen to live on Main Street. Some nights there's 10, 12, 15 trailer trucks going by, one after another. They're going by all night, day and night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Sometimes they get lost, and I've had to go out there with a flashlight because the guy's trying to make a U-turn down towards the meadows. So their traffic impact, based on a 2-employee business, like I say, is minuscule compared to the other traffic in this town with sprayers, tractors. So
Yeah, those-
Trucking companies.
Yep.
Two in that redirected, plenty of them who've got lost from Montreal drivers.
you live on a pretty quiet street, trust me.
Really?
Does anyone want to make a motion for this, please?
I'll make a
Keep going.
motion that we approve the special permit and site plan approval with the condition that the permit and the site plan approval be to the Thayers and the Thayer business for this site.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
And that we hope that you'll work with the town and Phil. And as I said, I don't know if that's technically a historical district, but there is funding for historic districts within
We'll look
town.
into it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does that also mean there's stop work orders lifted? If
I
they're
think
doing
there's a
the,
certain number of days for someone to appeal, right?
Yeah.
And then,
There's a 20-day appeal for any special permit.
it was limited.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So that, as soon as the special permit is filed with the town clerk, which should be
The only,
I
the
can
only,
go in and sign
the only
tomorrow.
work that'll be taking place is what the Conservation Commission already
Yep.
approved. That's the only thing we're gonna do next, and that's it.
Yep.
There's
Yeah,
no-
but the appeal of the special permit, there's a 20-day window between when it's filed with the clerk and if,
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
for your
thank
time.
you.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming so many times and the patience to see it through.
yeah, thank you. Oh, to read these? Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh, for the new ones, thank you. Didn't have to read them.
What is it?
Just reading the hearing notices. I didn't have to with the Thayers because it was continued. Oh, I'm gonna sneeze.
Where is this?
Oh, excuse me.
Bless
Right
you.
next to this property.
Yep, the hunting cabin with
You
it's all
know,
wooded.
the little, there's
I
a,
don't know about this hunting cabin.
yeah, it's a little, it's not a hunting cabin, actually, it's Lydia Zish's, or Lydia Sliz's, no, your Sliz.
Nope.
Zish's uncle lived there. I used to buy kindling from him. That was his house.
Used to buy what?
Kindling. from
Really?
him. He had this was a Christmas tree operation.
Now, where
This is
exactly?
the Engleharts are right here.
Yeah, that field
No.
is right there, Rock
Right.
Road.
So if you're looking at the Englehart's property and there's a big field to the left where the kids used to play t-ball,
Right.
where are we talking?
Okay, so then across Rocks Road, there's another big field?
Yep.
Okay, then woods.
Where the tree line
It's where the
starts.
tree line starts. It's right in there. Most of these trees on the front portion of it
Uh-huh.
are overgrown Christmas trees.
Oh, okay.
Oh, really? That's funny.
Yeah.
All right,
Wait a minute.
let's get going on
That's
this.
this one?
All right,
That's this
time.
project?
Yeah, that's the informal discussion that
Okay.
we're going to be having at the end. So
Okay, okay.
this first, we're going to be talking about the parcel next to that, which is 117.
Oh, okay, so it is next door.
Yeah, it's right next door to
Oh,
it.
Gerard
It's
printed me
right-
this.
Right
117.
there.
Is Gerard
This
here?
is where these guys want to go.
Yeah,
Right,
right.
okay.
Gerard, you printed me the same
Any papers?
notice. I need the one for it now. So now I have to wait.
117.
Oh, wait, hold on. I got it. Never mind.
64 West Street.
So you can start even though
Yep.
he's not here, right?
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for your patience. So, as we typically, tend to do, is running a little late,
All right.
but thank you for your time. We are going to open the public hearing for the special permit hearing for 117 West Street. I'm now going to read the meeting notice. The Planning Board of the Town of Hatfield will conduct a public hearing on September 1st, 2021 at 6:30 PM or more like 7:10 at Memorial Town Hall, 59 Main Street. Applicant is seeking a special permit with site plan approval from the board pursuant to section 5.27 of Hatfield zoning bylaw. Applicant would like to construct a commercial office and workshop at 117 West Street, Assessors Map 216-3. The complete application is available for inspection at the clerk's office and town hall during office hours. All right, now it's time for the applicant to go over.
It has an extensive amount of stormwater management using low impact development strategies associated with rain gardens, porous asphalt. And it really is intended to showcase the works that Scapes Builders and Excavation does in the world of ecological restoration, as well as their sustainable building technologies. The site entrance as proposed is a two-way entrance into the front parking lot, which has proposed vegetated screening along West Street. It has a bypass to an employee parking for Scapes Building and Excavation behind the building. And then a large screening area with the workshop behind and a proposed gravel parking area as well. The plans that I believe everyone currently has in front of them still have a proposed septic system beyond the proposed workshop area. We'd like to keep them in the plans just in case the extension is slower than the construction, but the intention is to not need to build the septic system and tie into the sewer extension that's going down 5 and 10.
The proposed building itself is, well, John, maybe you could talk about the building specifically, and then I can jump into the site and landscape, if that makes sense.
Sure. The intent, kind of that two-story portion, which is that rectangular part to the north on the site plan. The intent is for that to be Scape's offices. And the single-story portion is really just meant to be small business rental space. So we, in full disclosure, we're copying an idea from our current office building that we reside in. Our offices are in South Deerfield and our equipment's up in Conway, one location. The current business, it's anywhere from a dog cardiologist to a travel agent, just easy, affordable space. So yeah, it's pretty simple. Our side of the building is primarily for, office, a couple supervisors, project managers, a receptionist. Most of our employees are off working on projects. So that's the building.
Can I ask a question?
And would that, yeah,
There's no residential involved with this.
There's not.
Okay.
and would that be tearing down or taking down the existing building and putting this up in the same-ish spot or a different spot?
Where the current house is, in order to, just for that parking space in the driveway, is essentially right behind the current house. So the building actually would sit further back from the
Okay.
current building.
Oh, I see.
So I just have a comment on, and I see on your plan, the schematic for your office space and then the other space that you would then lease out, and you have each one of those listed as office.
Sure.
And I would just encourage you, when you're considering tenants, that you look at our table of use to make sure that those uses are allowed within a light industrial use, because, for example, some retail establishments and things like that, some service establishments are not allowed within a light industrial, but, a doctor's office, something like that, or probably, a professional office. So when you say office, that means something different than.
No, I appreciate that point, and we don't actually want a retail space. We
Yeah.
really want like an accountant and we want to keep it small and simple.
Yeah,
But
good.
thank you.
Something along the lines that's not going to generate a lot of traffic, like a convenience store or
Exactly.
a barber shop or a beauty
Yeah.
salon or something that's going to have constant in and out traffic all day.
And some people think this is a bad time to build office space. But interestingly, I mean, the building we're in now, I think there's always the issue where not everyone can work from home and they need a place to meet a customer or client. It might not be 5 days a week, it might be 3 days a week. So the intent is affordable space, a smaller, small business. And had I not seen it in our current building, I might not believe it either. So.
And it certainly is the intention that any of the leasees would need to get a permit for their business in front, through the town of Hatfield as well. So
Right.
any of their businesses would need to be registered, and where are they doing business to
Right.
fit into the bylaw? So anything that, so there's that also secondary layer.
Sure, but to the extent that you can screen some people and say, look, really happy that you're interested in this building, but it's not going to work. It's a
Sure.
square peg.
Absolutely.
So your potential rental space, that's going to be like enclosed, like in a mall? Is there outside, is the egress from the outside or from the inside?
The internal circulation of the building itself has a main entrance for their
And then there's this.
rental space.
Yeah, okay, I see. Yeah,
Yeah.
Hall.
Yeah, that's what I see. Okay,
Okay,
So they won't each individually have doors to
Right.
the outside.
right, okay.
Which is very specifically intended to not allow for
A lot of,
doors.
yeah.
yep.
Let's see what else. We are not requesting any waivers. I feel like we've gone through this so many times,
Yep.
so I want to make sure that I didn't gloss over anything. So I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
So I am looking, can you give us the other view?
Sure.
The north-south view? That's the east-west view, yeah. So this is your north-south view.
Correct.
And maybe just for the folks on TV, if you could point out the south view.
Sure.
Which
So the southern view of the building, this side, will be this elevation here.
Okay, good.
And
So, yeah, so the one thing I was a little surprised by, although we're going to be talking to someone who's interested in putting a solar array on the property to your north, is that I don't see any solar panel opportunities on here. Are you thinking of putting them in on that south side there?
That's actually exactly why that roof, that's a full south-facing roof.
Yeah, okay.
So that is intended, and, you know, one of the primary heating and cooling is heat pumps. So we are intending to, we just didn't, you know, this is a pretty basic rendering at the moment.
Okay, well, good. Well, that's good to hear. I would like them to speak a little bit about your the vegetative buffer that you're going to put in the front.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So we have the cross section, if you'll bear with me. So the distance in the setback, the highway right away here is significant. So there's nothing necessarily being proposed through that area other than keeping it maintained and cleaned, and then it'll transition into kind of a native pollinator meadow. We are proposing a raised berm in the front with evergreen trees planted, a variety of native evergreen trees planted on that. And then the stormwater rainwater garden is just beyond that. So, you know, this buffer is, what is the distance? I believe it's about a 15-foot wide vegetated evergreen buffer.
So I was driving, I drive by it almost every day, but I went out of my way today as driving by RK Miles, and then not the Steve Eltron, the old Steve Eltron building, but the new one, which is immediately adjacent to RK Miles.
Yeah.
If you can do anything even 3/4 of as nice as what they've done there, I mean, it seemed to me from looking at your schematics that that's what you have intended.
Yes.
If any of you have been by there, it's just, I mean, if King Street could look that good, we will someday have a King Street. It'll be called West Street. But if our West Street could look as good as what RK Miles has done and Steve Eltron, and hopefully what you all will do, it'll be a gem of a road.
Well, I'm biased, and as a builder, the materials we're using on our building and the landscaping, I would argue, is definitely as good.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, yeah, and I'm going to be biased again too. There's a much more diversity in evergreens.
Yeah, I'm
proposed,
talking about as you just
but
drive
sure.
by in terms of,
Absolutely.
it's just, you know, the
It's tucked away.
density is
Yeah.
tucked away, it's green.
Sure, yeah.
Now, of course, it's been very wet this year, but
Absolutely.
Aesthetics are really good there.
yes, yeah.
We got it.
That's the goal.
That is definitely the intention.
Can you talk a little bit more about just the scope of your business? And I know just for the sake of the recording and the public hearing this as well. And just like the traffic implications, how many people will be parked on
that's
this
Bob
site and
Donaldson's
that
old
kind of thing.
house.
Yeah, so
No.
we're,
Chestnut Street.
You guys are on mic.
it's okay. We're a general contractor. We do have carpentry and excavation in-house. So in terms of our business, you know, we have just the management side of the business, which is the main office. And we do have a storage component for our tools and equipment, which is what the Outback is for. like I said, it really is storage. It's, if we're not off at job sites, we're not doing a good job with our business. So, this summer, I don't think we've had, of our equipment, maybe one piece back at our yard. We do work at the local schools. We do residential, and generally we're off at job sites, but when we're not, we will be storing some equipment out back. So,
And maybe speak to like the employees and how many employees come to this.
Yeah, it mentions
site
9 staff
specifically?
members for parking spaces. And is that the office workers or are those more?
yeah, so on average, we're a 15-person business. I would say on a day-to-day operation, this is going to be 6 or 7 people truly occupying the building.
Mhm.
In the morning and evening, that is going to increase for people. If someone needs to come to the shop and pick up a piece of scaffolding or pick up a machine, that's generally, around that 7 o'clock time frame. And so I don't know if that's a good enough description, but we're a typical construction company. I don't want to say typical. I think we do a lot of work with the schools, and I only mention that because if we don't stay, orderly and clean and safe, we wouldn't work at those places. So the nature of our business is to be clean and organized and have clean equipment.
Do your excavation and you said carpenters,
Yes.
do they come to the shop every morning or do they go to the job site?
They go, the intent is always to stage the jobs that they're working on. There's, sometimes those jobs are 8 months long and we're staged, and sometimes they're a month. So there are moments where they are going back to the shop to get things, but on a daily operation, it's not everyone going to the shop and
Okay.
everyone leaving.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not like everybody goes in the morning and meets and gets in trucks and
Right.
goes. Everybody kind of goes from where they're living to the job site, sometimes weeks on end before they get back to the office again. Is that?
Oh, definitely.
fair?
Very
Yeah.
fair. Especially with the carpenters, that's just an easier thing to stage people. So.
Do we want to see if there's anybody for opponents or supporters of this?
Yeah,
to speak?
go ahead.
And- okay. Is there anything else you'd like to say now? We'll probably still have
I
some
don't
questions
think
for you
so.
after,
Sure.
but I just wanted to give any comments from any supporters of the project, either virtually. It doesn't look like there's anyone on virtually right now. Or any supporters out in the audience that would like to speak in support of this project. Now is your time. Any opponents? All right. I guess we'll close the public hearing then for now, unless there's anything else you want to add. Otherwise, we can start our discussions and have some follow-up questions for you.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Public hearing is now closed. Now the board can discuss. First of all, you've been coming to us and updating us for a while now. We kind of knew this was coming for a while. And again, sorry about last month, but we're here now. And same kind of thing. I want to make sure, I think over those courses of between last month and over the course of the last year or so, we've definitely gotten our questions and concerns addressed, I think, a little bit along the way. And you getting approval from the conservation, considering some of that's wetlands and stuff, I think was helpful. Are any questions or comments from members of the board about the project?
Pretty straightforward.
I think it's really straightforward. I think you guys done a really good job in preparing us.
Yeah, the application is really thorough, and
Yeah.
I feel really confident if it's all followed out the way it's laid out here.
Yeah, I think you guys have done a fabulous job in terms of the landscaping and the look of the building to mesh with an agricultural community. Even though it is out on a state highway, it's very creative in that regard. I appreciate that personally. I would make a motion to approve the special permit and site plan approval as submitted for 117 West Street Business Center.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Nope.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, any opposed? All right, you,
Do you have plans for us to sign? I mean, do you have a Mylar with you? And, because we should be signing the plan, right?
I don't know that we do have a specific, I didn't realize there was a specific plan, Mylar that you all sign. I thought it was the permit itself that gets signed.
Well, we can stamp, well, because we're approving also your grading plan, your sediment and erosion control plan. I mean, we're grading.
so I think we are signing these.
These,
And then
yeah.
there's usually the Mylar.
There's
copy.
usually a Mylar copy, but
Okay.
especially if you need to,
We can get that.
well, you might not, I don't know, do you need to record this with the registry of deeds?
Yes, so
They're gonna want a Mylar.
Yeah, so the special permit will require that.
Yeah.
And I believe it goes through the registry. So we'll just have to work with Gerard on making sure we get whatever documentation.
Yeah, and then typically these get signed, like at least one for our records, one for the town clerks, so. But
Yeah, so we provided all the plans.
yeah, so I think these are good. We can put a stamp on these that we can sign,
Okay.
but you're gonna have to get the Mylar in because you're gonna have to record that with the registry, and that'll need to be signed.
Okay.
With our approval.
We can do that.
All right.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Really appreciate it.
That took 15 minutes.
Because we heard it like 4 times. I feel like.
Well, also,
That's okay,
they have
George.
their act
I'm
down.
good.
Paul, aren't we supposed to also sign each sheet, right? You
Yeah.
have to sign every sheet.
Yeah, we get 7 copies.
Yeah.
Because we have 1, 2, 3, 4,
I'm-
5, and then you have more copies.
Well, so that would be good for Gerard to ask, because we get 7 copies so that there's 5 for us, and then there's, I don't know if we have to sign all 7, because there's 1 for our office and then 1 for the town clerk. So otherwise, the other ones, I don't know what the other ones are used for. Yeah,
Doesn't one go to the building inspector?
yeah, so 1 would go to the building inspector and then 1 to the town clerk. Oh, so we probably need 3 at least to be signed.
Yeah. And
Yeah, we
one
have
for
to
them.
dig that
One
up.
for
They
them
have
to
to-
take to the
Yeah. They're gonna have to
county,
do
to
the,
registry. of
they have to go,
deeds.
they have
That
to,
would be the Mylar.
the Mylar,
Mylar,
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Good to move on to the next item on the agenda. Hello. Thanks. All right, so
This is a hearing or discussion?
this is a hearing.
Just West Street,
So I'm gonna read the,
164? Are we on
Yeah.
164?
yes, we're at 164 West Street, yes. All right, so I'm gonna open the public hearing for 164 West Street. I'm gonna read the notice for the hearing. The planning board of the town of Hatfield will conduct a public hearing on September 1st, 2021 at 7 PM at Memorial Town Hall, 59 Main Street. Applicant Doug Lee is seeking a special permit with site plan approval from the board pursuant to section 4.27 of Hatfield zoning bylaw. The applicant would like to expand an existing self-storage facility at 164 West Street. The complete application is available for inspection at the clerk's office in Town Hall during business hours. So now's we'll hear your plans for what you're requesting tonight. Any comments from opponents or supporters? And that'll close the hearing and we'll discuss and vote. All right. And please introduce yourself. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. I met some of you last month. I was here for an informal briefing with Chris Chamberlain from Jeff's firm, Berkshire Design. I'm a commercial real estate investor, and I'm also a licensed architect. So I'm trying to be sensitive to the issues of the town zoning code. I'm here because I have a contract to purchase 164 West from the owner, Tony Gleason. And Jeff and I are here tonight to discuss a very modest expansion of the self-storage use, as well as a small expansion of the vehicle storage on the property. As you all have seen in the package, these are both uses that have been going on at the site for a long time. Self-storage since the beginning of the 2000s, and vehicle storage since the time that building was built in the 80s. And Jeff and his team have done a fairly extensive study of the historic uses on the site. which we think are consistent with our current and proposed uses. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff and answer any questions.
Thank you, everyone. Jeff Squire from the Berkshire Design Group, here on behalf of Doug and his project at 164 West Street. Just to familiarize yourself real quick, the 5 and 10 is off on the left-hand side of the sheet here, north is up. It's an existing 7-acre site roughly. There's a 25,000 square foot self-storage building on the center of the site. There's 7 additional freestanding self-storage buildings on the southern part of the property. This is, all asphalt currently now, and there's a gravel area in the back, and there's a larger asphalt area and parking area in the front, which is also being, this back portion was formerly Full Tilt Auto Service. There's a detention pond, and on the eastern portion of the property. And it's a fairly, and there's, you'll see in this picture, there's a hedgerow, pretty extensive evergreen hedge on the northern edge of the property. There's trailers and a number of vehicles that have been stored, generally in this area since, as Doug said, since the 80s when the site was built, and there was, a host of uses that extended that use on the site. And really the proposal is in this portion to add an additional 36 modular storage units, similar to what you see with pods and what is sort of the trend in the industry. These are, they're portable when they're empty, but when they are full, they are not intended to move from the site. So the idea is that these would be, these would remain in the location that's proposed. It would be surrounded with a chain link fence and a gate similar to, the other storage areas. And then in addition, like to formalize, so before I get too far, so the self-storage use is allowed by special permit in this light industrial district. Again, this is sort of expanding on that use. The vehicle storage, from what I understand under section 3.4 is a non-conforming use. And so what I understand is we would request a finding from the planning board to allow that, allow an extension of that non-conforming use. And so through that, we are formalizing, this permit proposal by delineating an area for those vehicles to be stored, up to about 40 vehicles. These generally would, remain in place for, for longer periods of time. They wouldn't be coming and going to the site, very frequently. No other changes to the site are proposed. These are all on existing gravel or parking paved areas. And so there's no other site changes, site utilities, or other expansions that are being requested. This does result in an overall reduction in vehicle trips is the letter, the application letter informs. So this would, reduce the current site to, I think we've got 70 trips on a weekend day, and 68 trips during the week on a weekday, which would be certainly lower than the current uses with the vehicle repair shop and whatnot. And I think the intent is to, retain the office space and all of the other space that's in there for the storage facility, right?
So wait a second. The current tenants, Full Tilt and overhead doors?
No, Full Tilt is the only other tenant.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they're leaving then?
No.
Okay,
Full Tilt is there.
they're gonna remain. Okay.
Yeah, it's just under-
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah. Maybe I was like that, January, February?
Yeah, no, that was just, we just went
Yeah,
through
yeah.
that. Yeah,
No,
okay.
they're doing great. As you can tell.
Okay, so then explain to me how the numbers, how the traffic gets reduced then.
So I'm sorry, I was saying that the Full Tilt would remain. The overall use of, I think with the expansion of the current existing self-storage, really it's such a minimal number that, so maybe I misspoke in saying that it's a reduction. It may be a slight increase, but given the minimal number of self-storage, the minimal number of traffic trips for self-storage facility, the increases.
Yeah, I think Jeff's numbers are 1 car per peak hour increase. That's it.
Yeah.
Because this is the kind of thing where you're in between apartments
Yeah.
or whatever, you put the stuff in there, you're not going back and forth to get stuff on a
No,
daily
there's not
basis.
frequent trips back and forth.
And the vehicle storage, those are not buildings. That's just a space on the ground. Those are
It's on the road,
lines.
Yeah.
Those are
It's
lines on,
already being used.
and those are what, boats, RVs?
No, they're mostly cars and RVs. It's, seasonal people who leave their car or their RV here for the most part.
My daughter and her husband park their RV there when they're not using it.
Yeah.
I just talked to her about it 3 hours ago.
Okay.
So I have a question
But one of
about,
the- Yeah.
so you wouldn't be changing like the surface or anything like that? You're just going to keep it as is, just designate that. So I'm looking at how close that is to some of these retaining ponds and wet areas. And I'm curious if you had any conversations with Conservation Commission. I know we didn't mention, I don't think we mentioned that last month, but it's something that I was thinking about when reviewing these plans.
And I thought Chris talked about
No,
talking.
it's well beyond 100 feet. And,
Okay.
and, yeah.
It just doesn't look like that to me.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Even
I
the
think
parking,
line-
even the
Right.
parking
I
area?
think the line is on the other site plan, Jeff?
It may be on this other one.
Yeah, so it's on this one.
So it does extends to where the vehicle storage is, which would be.
Right, but I'm looking at the parcel where, like, if you hold up your other one in your hand there, there's right where your thumb is, that's also some water there, correct?
Oh, right. So this buffer zone, right, so this buffer zone extends, currently extends through this site. But we're not proposing, there's no
Construction, yeah.
site modifications that are being made other than designating an area for these activities, for these uses to occur, rather than them being, haphazardly scattered about the site. Because that's the current.
Right, and they were
function
happy, yeah, and I'm just concerned for any sort of parking being that close, if there's been a look at any, I'm just wondering, I don't know about that, but that's just something I'm thinking about as in being near that.
So those,
water area.
yeah, so those would be cars or trucks, RVs that would be parked within that 100-foot buffer zone. The buildings themselves are actually well outside the 100-foot buffer zone.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
One other thing, it's 99%, storage is 99% occupied. So we feel like there is demand and unmet demand from the neighbors in the area.
I just from the application and stuff, again, like thorough, but that was one of my concerns was just the closeness to that,
Yeah.
the water on the north
I
part
think,
there.
yeah, and I think given that, what our conversations have been is that given the previous uses on this site, which included tractor trailer, repair and storage, and, a number of other, uses that, parked vehicles would be a de minimis use or lesser of an impact on, this area, which, has currently been disturbed and moved around, with vehicles moving in and out more frequently.
These two, where the two units are on your second diagram, the new proposed, do you anticipate ever moving those? You say once they're full, you can move them when they're empty, but once they're full, then somebody comes in and moves their stuff out, and you're not gonna move them around though?
No.
You don't anticipate?
No, we just would love propose that we keep them there, and that's, subject to your approval, so.
Yeah, just thinking from a perspective too, since they're like I'm kind of getting into the board discussion piece of it, but since they're like permanent, but not, technically they're temporary, but like, is it something that if you were to sell it or move, and then someone else moves in that doesn't really want a self-storage business or something like that, like who would be then responsible for these like temporary but not taking those out? I'm just thinking down the road.
No, it'd be like modifying the building. It's the same thing. That a buyer would have to demolish it and move it like they would a piece of the building.
Right, I'm just saying, would it be on you having the temporary pieces of that, or would it be on the buyer to then move that? Because they're just weirdly like not permanent, but.
And the buyer.
It'd be the buyer.
Okay.
It'd be,
It could go either way.
Yeah.
It's no, value in selling them, then.
it's, in some respects, it's no different than our previous applicant who's going to tear a house down.
Right.
The seller isn't tearing the house down, the buyer is tearing the house
I guess
down.
it's just like the
Yeah.
like permanentness of it.
Yeah,
Or the
right.
it's just, different than a house
there-
in my mind with that.
Yeah.
There are 20 of them on the site already.
Right.
The prior owners put 20 of them on the site.
Anything else you'd like to say? Otherwise, we can ask for any opponents or supporters from the public to speak.
I don't think so. It's fairly straightforward.
Do you propose any new signage?
Um,
I don't
No,
see it on here.
no, nothing that wouldn't be conforming is planned. So
Or take
we would have
ones
come in
that-
with the application if we did.
So basically, the site is the same. You're not doing anything out close to
Correct.
Route 5
Correct.
in terms of changes. You're just putting in the additional units and then,
Non-conforming
Then-
use.
right, and then parking in one area instead of helter
Correct.
skelter.
Right, right.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we can ask for
I think that's it.
public comment. Any comments from people in the public or in the audience for supporters of the project? Now it's time to come and speak.
Hey, I live at 148 West Street, so right, literally I'm your neighbor. And I just want to say I got absolutely no problem with it. It looks great. Thank you.
And can I have your name, just for the record?
Nick Ryder, RYD, yeah.
Thank you. Any,
Have you signed in here, actually?
It is the sign, I think it's the clipboard.
No, it's right here, yeah.
anyone in the audience, an opponent of this project? Now's the time to speak. All right. And motion to close the public hearing?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, public hearing is now closed. Time for board to deliberate.
But, I mean, I think, again, Doug has been in a couple times. I think we've had a chance to sort of consider this project over a couple different meetings. It seems pretty straightforward. We will have to make a determination regarding the non-conforming pre-existing non-conforming use of the parking of the vehicles.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, like I said, my only flag was
Yeah.
parking near and then having that near that, those retaining ponds and that water, even.
Just to let you know, when these special permits come in, I do, the clerk's office, I do give a copy to Conservation Commission,
Right.
Building Commission, Fire Department, so, I mean, the Conservation Commission did receive this permit, so they felt.
They didn't like think they needed
They
to.
had there's no recorded statement.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a thing, like it's been used like that before, just stating it, that.
So the non-conforming use is the vehicle storage on site. Right now, you've got existing here at 40 plus and your proposed is 60 plus?
Just call it 60. I don't know why there's a plus there.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I guess there's a plus is because it's a 7-acre lot. Hypothetically, you could fit 300 cars.
Right,
We're
but
not asking for that.
right, I mean, it's that's like asking Mom and Pop theme park to become Knott's Berry Farm. I mean, it's
I missed the plus. I'm not sure why we.
yeah. So I'm wondering if given that we are considering this as a pre-existing non-conforming use, that we could say up to and not to exceed 60
Okay.
in our.
Sounds good. Now I'm recalling maybe why Chris put the plus, because the prior owner used to say that he could store 80 or 100 cars.
Yeah.
So maybe we didn't want to be inconsistent with what he used to advertise. I don't know.
Right. But you're right. I mean, that then gets to, that would exceed the area probably that you would have here, right?
Yeah, we're not asking for that.
Right.
Yeah, actually.
Or we could say, do you have, did you bring plans for us to sign and?
I didn't think this was a very substantial change and I wasn't aware that a Mylar. Typically when we have a special permit in Northampton or Amherst or any of those, typically we just record the decision
And that decision references the plans of record, which is on file at the town, the town's office. That's usually where they, and so.
And
we're
so
happy to
this,
do
so
whatever.
you would not anticipate recording this at the registry?
We don't ever typically record a plan for special permit.
Right.
We will for subdivisions and other things.
Right.
But for special permits, it's usually just the decision that needs to be on record.
Well, then we could reference this. What we could perhaps do then is link our determination on the pre-existing non-conforming use to the areas identified on the plan. And if you can get 65 cars within that boundary, you don't have we got a distance of how far they are, but not a distance of, and how far they are from other buildings, but not how long. Is this a football field? Or these, what? There's no dimensions of that spaces.
And also, when you limit with 60 cars, it could be boats, it could be RVs.
I was saying, I was going to say 60
I'm just thinking about the
vehicles.
limitation
Yeah,
of the,
right.
of how we phrase that
Yeah.
would be different, yeah.
So that way, if you said that it could fit within this footprint, then you're not spreading all over the place. But we don't, the footprint is somewhat, it doesn't has that 10 by
Right, we
20,
didn't
is it?
stripe
10?
it for some reason, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was more trying to contain the area.
We
rather
actually
than
didn't want to make the
dimension
drawing
area.
too confusing either.
Right. But we could.
Yeah, that's fine.
You're going to remove that ramp?
In the back, yeah, yeah.
Any other comments or questions or thoughts? Or questions for the applicant or a motion?
I would propose that we approve the request for a special permit with site plan approval as proposed, and acknowledging the pre-existing non-conforming use to include parking vehicles on site
Within the area?
within the area designated on the plan.
You guys did a really good job of looking up all the last.
Do we have a second?
All of them last.
Second.
I'll second it.
Nothing if not to.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. All right, motion passes.
Actually, Gerard, I think it would be useful for you to determine exactly what it is that either they or even our previous applicant needs to provide us, because if this isn't a subdivision, so there's no, like the other gentleman will have to bring in a Mylar because he's asking for a subdivision. We had that other one that maybe the decision references the plans.
Right.
And so if you could check on that, because they obviously are going to have to, if they do have to bring in, if they do have to bring in a Mylar, they're going to have to bring one into you anyway, and we're not signing anything tonight. Yeah. So the decision is maybe enough with the reference to the plan as Appendix A, so to speak.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good job, everyone. Guys did a good job.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Now to the last item a formal item on the agenda, I should say. If I can find my agenda amidst all this paper that I have on my desk. Okay, here. We have an informal discussion with, are you Russ Burke? Hello. We are here to discuss a potential solar array at 112 West Street. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Which is the parcel just north of the one we had the special hearing on, actually.
Yes, I discovered that this evening. Small world.
Actually, it'd be useful, I think, if you put that, maybe brought this over here a little further.
Sure.
That way it'll be maybe easier for John to shoot it with his camera. Yeah. And we have smaller versions of
Can
those.
you turn it,
Towards the camera.
George, can you move?
Towards the camera, okay.
Or he's got it.
That's better.
Cool.
Thank you.
Perfect.
I'll try to keep my face away from the camera so it doesn't break.
Good, everybody.
Yeah, and if you actually don't mind actually sitting down in front of the mic, you can keep that just because we need the
Okay.
mic for the audio. Thanks.
Sit next to it, you can move the chair up.
Okay.
Oh, we're just getting you all set up. Here we go. All right, this is, yeah,
Okay. Well, I'm Russell Burke. I'm the Special Projects Manager with the BSC Group. And I'm here on behalf of our client, Volta Energy. It's a California-based solar development company that works all around the country. Actually, the engineer I'm working with is a former National Grid employee who, up until 2 years ago, lived in Shrewsbury and now is a West Coaster. I found that out today, which is interesting. The property, 121 West Street, is about 30 acres in size. The front portion of the property, which is roughly here, is about a little pad over 9 acres, and the balance of the property is 21 acres. Now, we have been, this is kind of a dynamic process. We've been working with our client. Our first step was to provide them an existing conditions plan. And as we've been doing that, what I have before you this evening are going to be iterations 2 and 3. Stephanie, when we spoke last week, I'd sent you a plan of the property with a superimposed concept plan. Based on the existing conditions, that concept plan has changed from the original to a second version to a third version. This is the second version, which shows the property lines. And the crosshatched area represents the approximate location of the solar field. And it's too big to go on one sheet. And you'll notice how this differs from the plan that you have before you. Just late last week, we had completed the field delineation. There is a certified vernal pool that's on the property that we picked up from the USGS maps and on file with the state. And so we delineated that, and we so informed our clients, and they said, oh, well, gee, let's try to keep away. So they amended, they brought it out a little bit more in order to keep the distance well beyond the 100-foot buffer from the.
so is that dotted hash line around that, is that the 100 feet?
That's the 100-foot buffer from the border of the vernal pool resource area. Now, the other thing that popped up during our review is, these plans upside down.
So is this version 3 now?
This is version 3.
Okay.
So this is actually right off the presses. I had to go and get a plot made of this this afternoon. One of the things we pointed out to our client was when you look at the topography, it's relatively flat here, and then as you go further west, it flattens out. But you have an area in between here that is slopes that, you know, up to and beyond 15% grade.
Yeah.
And they looked at that, and I said, you really want to start, you know, putting your panels there? And they said, well, theoretically we could do it, but we'd rather stick to the flatter ground. So what they've done is they have created a gap. So they would have the first field here, leave that area untouched, and then pick up again on the other side. And again, maintaining the buffer and then extending just a little bit further into the property. Now the plan, the property is divided into 2 zoning districts. The front portion, this is the approximate zoning line, represents the extent of the light industrial district, which does allow solar, ground-mounted solar by right with site plan review. The other portion of the property is zoned rural residential. which does allow for solar voltaic ground-mounted facilities by special permit, also with site plan review. And
Is it rural residential or outlying residential?
rural
It
residential.
is, okay, because you're getting up into what we call the rocks, and that gets into outlying residential pretty quickly, so, yeah.
So that's what we're looking at in terms of use there. The proposal is for it to have 1 megawatt of AC power, and the other portion would be 1.6 megawatts of DC power. They would also be proposing, well, it's not shown here, but they would probably, outside of the field, they're looking to do battery storage, which is now sort of de rigueur with solar facilities because it allows for the utilities to draw on power from the facilities when the sun isn't shining. And so they're looking at up to 3 small structures. They're actually like garden sheds that you have in your backyard. They're roughly 10 by 15 in size, 8 foot high, that store the batteries. And that's something that the utility companies are incentivizing solar fields to have now to provide some certainty about power when the sun don't shine, essentially. Let's see, what else did I want to share with you? So the purpose of this meeting is, and I'm very pleased that this board would entertain a pre-submission discussion, because I'm a firm believer, let's get the bad stuff out of the way before we get into the formal presentation. It's better for you, it's better for the town, it's better for the developer. And so my questions would be, first, in terms of a permitting pathway, we'd be looking at site plan review for the whole thing, special permit for the portion that is in the rural residential area. Now, the other thing that caught my attention in your zoning bylaw is major development. And the question is, does this rise to the level of major development review? And looking at what you would want from us, impact on taxes, none, traffic, none, use of utilities, none. So you go down the list, there's really not much.
Yeah, that major development provisions in our bylaw were, for Walmart's, Home Depot kind of big box store kind of projects.
The criteria I saw was traffic over 1,000 vehicles per
right.
day, which
Yeah.
The disruption of 10 or more acres, and then a building of 30,000 square feet or greater. So
Right. Yeah.
I think the 3 storage things are 150 square feet each, with total 450 if they went with the full 3. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or learn of any concerns or items that we should be.
I have a question regarding, so I've been by there, but I never walked out on the property. The first set of lines behind where the residence is, that's, that behind the residence, where the hat.
Where solar field 1 would be?
No, where you're gonna put one,
Right here?
lot 1, I guess we'll call it.
Yeah.
That area, the topography there of the ground is soil, not rocky.
That's Walpole. I actually looked this up today. That area there, that area there is a Walpole soil. It's a silt loam. It's right now wooded, but that actually is there's a lot of farmers in Hatfield that farm on Walpole soil. In fact, it's in the field across the Rocks Road, right where your finger is, right there. the open field that the Engleharts have, that's
Yeah.
the same soil type.
Okay.
So just visualize that without trees on it.
So as you go up, you're talking about passing where that area is, and you were talking about a 15% increase in
Yeah.
grade.
Well, in here, the grades are very steep.
Yeah. So then you're going.
Then what happens to, what kind of the soil is the next?
Oh, the next soil up there is the kind of stuff that you farmed 150 years ago and you don't touch now. It's all rocks. That's rocks. That's Rocks Road. They're going to be
So
yeah. So they're going to be
challenged to.
They're going to be
solar.
challenged putting that in those, because we prefer spike systems here in town. And so I mean, in addition to cutting down a lot of trees,
Yeah, how much, that's
lot of-
my next question.
That's
Yeah.
gonna be my question too.
clear cutting a lot of forest. You're going to be driving those pegs or those spikes into what at one time were musket balls during the Civil War. I mean, this area of the town was a mining area for musket balls for the Union Army.
That's cool.
So you've got,
They didn't get all of them?
you can get all of them. It's called Rocks Road for a reason. So your Walpole sandy loam disappears very, very quickly.
30 acres of trees.
And then you get into that steep area. So Paul, when you're looking at the Englehart's holly shed, the road goes back, it's flat, and then it goes really steep.
Yes.
Yeah, you can sled on, I mean, you could kill yourself sledding on it.
It's been
It's
a
so
while.
steep.
I've been up there. I've hiked up there. But
Yeah, so on the one hand, I'm pleased to see that your clients are not interested in putting solar panels on that steep slope. The other thing that you should really look at, you identified the vernal pool, but if you haven't been to the natural heritage site in the state of Massachusetts, you should look at that, because I live out near here, and I'm assuming that line, that squiggly road line, is Rocks Road.
No, that to me, I
No.
think might be a stream or something.
This is a footpath.
That's a footpath. So do you know where because Rocks Road goes,
Rock Road is up here.
well, it's right on the it's right on the line, right on the northern boundary. So, yeah, okay. Well, so we are visited at any time during the year by bears, porcupine, skunks, deer. There's a lot of habitat back there.
Some of my backyard.
Yeah. And so if you are, if there is areas identified by the Natural Heritage site for the
We'll double check that.
state of Massachusetts for rare habitat.
Right, we did look at the state GIS and did not find it, but we'll double check that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's the exact name of the
I need to look it up again, because we had the same with the potential solar array that was going to go on Chang Farm property.
Yeah, excuse me?
Natural heritage.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, we did, look at the GIS, but we can double check that.
I would double check it
with
just to
natural
make sure that,
heritage, but I'm not aware of any
Yeah.
rare species habitat
okay.
on the site, but we'll double check that certainly.
So by not going on the steep slopes, how much of this would you see from 5 and 10? I mean, you're setting this way back off of the highway. So your first panel is going to be, I'm assuming you're not cutting those trees down. So the first panels probably wouldn't be visible at all. I just wonder if,
Right,
as
this
you,
is the tree line,
Yeah.
tree line here, so.
It might be visible from 5 and 10 north, like by the Engleharts.
as you're driving,
Yeah.
I
yeah.
think what you would see mostly here, they're looking to, as I said, put the battery structures back here, so those won't be visible. They did say, however, what they have not done yet, because they're still early in the process, is National Grid will be running the show as far as how you get the power from here to there.
Mhm.
And so that is still to be determined, which before we file with you folks, we would have specifics with regard, and actually, we'd run that by you before we even file.
I have a question about an access road, that back. how would, do we
How would you get to
how
the
would you
back
get to
part
that
to
back
build?
parcel in
to
case
build
of
it?
emergency response or something like that?
Oh, there'd have to be access. It would be an unpaved, a trail that would be at least accessible by, all-terrain vehicle, probably a little more substantial, but I would assume it would be on the perimeter, and through here, they would have to work a way through there, to be determined, to get up there. But the field itself would have to have some sort of access, which we are not showing, but that is a good point, that we will include proposed access.
I have a question also.
Yeah, I do too.
So that front section where the crosshatch is,
Mhm.
is that presently wooded?
Yes.
So, and how many acres of woodlands are you proposing to clear cut?
I would say that the panels are probably going to occupy, typically the rule of thumb is that you get 1 megawatt from about 5 acres of panels.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to be 2.5 megawatts total. That's probably going to be
12 acres.
12 acres of.
And then would you imagine that they would cut even further south because some of those trees are pretty high to not block lighting onto the panels as well? So like even though they might even cut.
I think there would be some cutting beyond that, but we would certainly have to show you the extent of the cutting. But I think we're mindful to try to minimize the site to begin with. Not go for a home run, let's put it that way.
So, and as a follow-up, what gets cut in the back part?
Go ahead.
How big is that back part? And how much of that is going to be clear cut? Everything?
Yeah, and I'm thinking about driving spikes into the rocks,
Well,
disturbing that vernal pool too.
The other question I had is, sometimes they do them on rails. Is the board totally adverse towards rails where it may prove more advantageous than?
Well, typically in a town like ours, these solar panel projects have been proposed on farmland where you're not going to find a rock for 10 feet.
Yeah.
And so we have required that they be just spikes. So there's no concrete footings.
Mhm.
What we're looking for is to reduce the amount of site
On the ground.
site manipulations, that can't be removed in 20 years.
Right.
If you can pull these things out in 20 years or 25 years after their life expectancy has been achieved, so that we're not left with a bunch of junk in the woods, then that's sort of that's what we would prefer.
Well, I'll work with my client and see.
I mean, this is an interesting thing because there's a real pull and tug in the state and right here in the valley. Because on the one hand, the easiest place to put a solar field is on these open farmland. But then you're taking that open farmland out of production.
Right.
But cutting down a whole bunch of trees is cutting down a carbon sink to then produce renewable energy. So it's like, what do we do? What do we do here?
Can we go back to that back piece? How many acres is that back piece approximately? I know it's an odd shape.
The back piece.
No, just where the crosshatch is.
Where the cross section?
Yeah.
Well, the entire section is about 21 acres, and so I would.
6 acres?
I
5,
would
6
consider
acres?
that eyeballing it is 6, 7 acres.
Okay.
something like that.
And that would all be clear cutted also?
Correct.
Have to be.
Okay, and the stuff around it on the south side?
They can't touch anything within the 100-foot
Well,
buffer,
the
really.
Right.
100-foot buffer.
Okay, right. Okay, I see. I
Beyond
can, I was having trouble seeing where that 100-foot buffer is.
If they're going to go beyond this, I don't, my honest answer is, I don't know if this includes how much clearing is done to allow visibility for the panels to the sun or not, but we can determine that But I would say that it really depends on the height of the trees there.
But no matter what, we're talking about cutting at least, you say, 15 acres?
About 10 to 12, 10 to 12.
Maybe?
12?
Yeah.
12 acres?
Yeah.
So you're talking about clear cutting 12 acres of trees?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just to get the numbers out there.
Mhm.
It's a lot of trees.
A lot of trees, yes. Understood.
But yeah, and also like, what do you do on a parcel that's all rocky like that?
All right. Oh, I'm not saying that
Yeah,
it's
just-
not a bad idea.
No, yeah, exactly.
It just, that's a lot of, having been in the forestry business.
I haven't been up to this part of the site. I haven't been to Hatfield in several years, but my gut reaction is if the soil is that gnarly, it probably doesn't support huge trees either.
Yeah, so I went on the USDA's web survey today, and I was looking at the site primarily to the, immediately to the west of Route 5. And that's where all the Walpole is. I didn't even get up into the rocks. And so, as you can well imagine, in fact, there's a trailer park right next to this, not far from here, that's called Rock Ridge. Or something, Rock Ledge. Yeah.
Not the type of name you want to have.
So as you go west,
Yeah.
it's flat, 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 and then it just, like you said, there's very steep slopes. Then it levels off, but it's not leveling off into, Illinois farm ground. It's leveling off into rocks.
We'll take an assessment
Yeah.
as to what the tree cover is in
Yeah.
terms of vegetative density as well as height. I'm just from what you're saying, given the toughness of the soil, it seems to me that large trees are going to be fewer than they would be, say, in the Walpole series.
Oh, that may very well be the case, but it may also make for the installation of your panels that much tougher. I mean, it's not like I said, it's not like just sticking a spike in the ground and you don't hit a stone.
Right. Well, I will work with my clients and see if we can't come up with a mutually acceptable solution to that.
I'm not familiar really with as much as you are, because that's kind of your neck of the woods, literally.
Yeah.
I know there's areas up there that are preserved. Is any of that near that parcel preserved land in the back?
No,
Okay.
actually it goes.
There's a bit of the
Watershed-
resource
yeah.
protection district that comes right
Okay.
there.
Yeah, so there's most of the protected property around the watershed, and then also just out that way is much further west.
Okay.
So I have another question regarding how, I don't know how to phrase it, or who would answer this question is, how much of a filtering system does that acreage there, 10 acres, 12 acres, whatever it is, act as a water when it rains and snow melts and things? There's a lot of
Erosion control?
Erosion control, but protecting that vernal pool, because I'm thinking, and I don't know, I haven't been up there, I'm thinking that retains water and it slowly releases the water down and it feeds that vernal pool and feeds the vegetation down there. And once that's gone, what's going to happen to that vernal pool?
Well, that's why they give 100-foot buffer. But
Yeah, I know,
right.
but that 100 feet, but you're taking out
a lot of trees.
Well, you're
30
taking out trees, but you will be grass growing underneath. So
Yeah, but grass roots are not the same as tree roots.
Right.
Well, actually,
I think grass.
if you have a good conservation cover out there, I mean, a good grass, those roots it can get very deep, but the other thing is what you would need to show us, I think, to get to Paul's point, is if you look at, we would want to know where flow is going, because, it could be that this vernal pool, I'm looking at these your,
I don't have that.
the topographic, elevations here. And so it could be that most of your flow is going away from the vernal pools. But you would need to demonstrate that to us.
Okay.
So you see what I mean? Because it could very well be that the flow from here is actually going north and away from the vernal pool, which would, I think, allay some of the concerns that Paul is raising.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So one of the other things always, so you see out west after the fires, when the ground is bare and the rains come, the amount of water that runs uncontrollably downhill. I see a lot that's going to be gone to protect that flow of water. And I understand what you're saying about the ground being able to control it, but without those trees there, and theoretically without those root systems there, you're not going to get grass to grow in that rock really fast, no matter what. So what I'm worried about is the amount of water that could potentially come off that steep part that you're not going to use, and then there's nothing to control that water between where your panels are going to be and that vernal pool.
And just given the nature of the way that the climate is changing, it's more
There's
intense
more, yeah,
rainstorms.
right, bigger
So if
bigger
anything,
flows of water at any given time.
Do a zoning or stormwater study.
Okay.
You look at the soil characteristics
Mhm.
of existing conditions.
Right.
And so if you're talking about an area up here that's poorly drained to begin with, whether the trees are there or not.
No, I'm talking about where you're taking the trees out. I'm only talking about where you're taking trees
I'm
out.
talking about where you take the trees out.
Okay.
You have trees there, but the soil is poor soil.
Right.
They are not absorbent.
Mm-hmm.
Taking the trees out is not going to be as much of a deal as if they were in soils that were good soil, or well-drained soil. So we can take a look at the soil composition and do a stormwater assessment. I think I understand that's a concern, and that's something we can certainly take a look at and satisfy the board's concern with respect to stormwater management, not only during construction, because obviously during construction, there would have to be sedimentation, erosion control that, is de rigueur, that would have to be put in place. But the concern you have is not only during construction, but after construction. How is this going to function? Is there going to be a degradation in terms of, the stormwater as it affects any sensitive resource area?
Right.
We certainly can look at that.
Okay. I think that would
And
be
this is the type of thing
why you're here now.
I want to know now.
Right. That's
Not be in the middle
and
of a public hearing.
right. And we may be throwing a lot of stuff at you, but this is the time for us to throw it at you now when we're having an informal discussion, and you can, things that you can then look more deeply into, or your client can look more deeply into.
Yeah, and I'll get the name of that. I don't know if it's exactly the National Heritage Site or whatever, but I'll follow up with you with what that website is in the state where you have to kind of.
It is national heritage.
Yeah.
That basically identifies
Habitat.
where there's endangered
Endangered
species.
species, yeah.
And we have a whole staff that.
The other thing
works on that.
about splitting that up too, might make it better like pathway for, because you have to fence in these solar arrays or whatever, but like having the two different parts of it could be a nice like wildlife corridor in between, which is nicer than blocking a giant swath or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because there is a lot of wildlife movement out there, so this would impact that corridor. And to Jimmy's point, I mean, it would behoove you, as you probably maybe are aware of if you live around here. I mean, there were two instances out in Williamsburg and just west of here where solar arrays were put in, and they completely washed out nearby streams, and they were slapped with huge fines by the AG's office, and restoration efforts going on now because they put them in, and the grass is supposed to grow, but it didn't grow enough in time to withstand these huge storms. So the fact that there were trees there before and now there's not trees, I would disagree. I mean, the trees do, it is different than totally bare ground.
Mhm.
If you've got a full canopy catching that rain and, and then it filters down through the canopy before it hits the ground, that's a lot different than all of that rain just coming straight down where there were where there's no trees anymore.
And I would say that Williamsburg land is probably more in line with that rockier area than.
Yeah, and you've got there, and one of them was, I think, the biggest environmental penalty paid in the state's history.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, they just washed out.
Shocked when I read that.
Yeah, they just wiped out this entire wetland area that, of course, they were far enough away from, but they just, it just took it out. It's on the Westfield River, wasn't it, or the Huntington River?
No,
I think in Westfield.
Yeah,
I think so. Oh,
or one of the tributaries.
a
to the
tributary to a major river. But it was in Williamsburg.
Yeah,
I can't remember
Mill
the name
River.
of
in the
the
middle
little
of the
stream there.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I know you would have to meet with the Board of Selectmen on this, but do you have any estimate on what the revenue to the town would be annually from this project?
No. Okay. And I would advise that you really can't base your decision on fiscal impact.
That's not why I asked the question. I
No,
just
but
would like to know the answer to that
no,
question.
I don't know, and I think it would be more with the Board of Assessors, how they have treated other projects in town.
Well, usually these go to the Board of Selectmen and they negotiate, but I didn't know if you had someone in your office that
That's
had
about
done
my
an
take, right?
estimate. Okay.
Any other questions, or I think you got enough homework, I think, for now.
No, this, again, is the purpose, and I appreciate the opportunity to meet with you and to get this type of feedback, because it's far better to know now what the hot button issues are, and we can work in addressing those.
I think in my opinion, I think the hot button is going to be the amount of forest trees that are cut down.
And how that would, and then impacting the wildlife and environment.
I'm inclined to agree with that also, having a forestry background.
And knowing that that's a hunting corridor too for folks and a lot of wildlife there. Just like there is in our farm fields where there's now solar too. So.
Right.
Yeah, there's a reaction is a reaction.
Yeah, and also just, I think it'll be visible, I think, to a lot of people who are driving south from the north, driving into south at that property. They'll be able to see probably some of that, at least the front half of the first area.
I don't know. I think we'll take a look at that, but I think.
Do you know offhand the distance between the road and the beginning of the solar panels?
Well, from here to here is 300 feet.
Okay.
So
That's
you're
what I was
talking about
100 yards.
a football field and then a field goal length after that.
Okay.
So
About 110 yards.
And there's a lot of trees between there and there.
all of this.
Yeah, you can barely see the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, I drove by and the house was actually the tree line goes even further around there, but.
Well, yeah, no, the house is right. It's just right off the road there. It's
Yeah, it's
right
pretty
there. And
close.
it's pretty much solid trees from there back.
Yeah.
Like I said, he had a Christmas tree farm there for a long time, and those are oversized Christmas trees.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fairly thickly wooded,
Yeah.
right in and around there.
So they're planning to retain that. Is that your understanding?
All of this
Right.
is going to remain, as well as all of this. So this will be virtually not visible at all.
Oh, that's correct.
Yeah, the back part.
And most of this, I doubt if this is going to be very visible. Probably the only visible thing may be the,
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that right to the north of that is a field. So what I'm saying is.
Oh, right, oh, this way.
That's Englehart's
So I
Field.
feel like
Okay.
you'd be able to see all of that if you're driving
That's all
south,
Englehart's
looking out
Field.
over that field right there.
I can't read that.
Can't read it either.
Would it make sense to just shift this down more?
Yeah, I'm curious. I would also want reasoning as to why it's like right there on that particular side of the park, out of all that space there, like why that particular spot was chosen versus other.
I don't know if there was a special reason for it, but if,
Maybe, I don't know if it's setback or something, but.
if keeping it less visible by shifting it down, I'll certainly present that to my clients as a.
Just something to
That's
consider,
something
because
for
the
them to
parcel right
consider.
north, like I said, I think is a
Because-
giant field that.
Because if they can live with this gap, after reviewing the topography there and deciding it would probably be better to move back here, I don't see why they couldn't just shift that down.
Yeah, if you shifted that down and there was a tree line to the north, you wouldn't see this at all.
Right.
You virtually would
Yes.
not see this from the road.
Yeah, and I think this was just arbitrary on their part.
Yeah,
So
it's
I-
something to consider with visibility in that particular part there. All right.
We have a few more things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for indulging me with your time and your input.
you.
It's been very helpful, and I look forward to working with you and satisfying your concerns.
Thanks for bringing all your stuff.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
You have to drive back to Boston.
I live in Groton, so it's not too bad.
And where?
Groton,
Where, Connecticut?
Mass,
Massachusetts.
Groton, Mass.
yeah.
Oh, it's gonna be bad storms out.
Drive
or
safe.
raining.
Yeah.
Well, I just have such great luck.
Choosing the night.
Yeah.
All right.
It's supposed to be torrential rain on the way home, so
Yeah.
Yep.
Be careful.
Good luck.
just drive slowly on Route 2 and
Nice bright road.
on a night like tonight, I think I came up because I had to stop at our office in Worcester to get these done. And
The lights in the
I'd
rain.
rather Route 2 than the Mass Pike.
Same.
And,
The lights in the rain and the speed.
oh, and you get behind the trailer trucks with the spray, it's just blinding. It's,
Good luck. Have a good ride home.
Yep.
thank you all.
All right, on to the next and final pieces of the agenda. Any board discussion or updates for anyone?
Yeah, I have something. I want to wait till this gentleman leaves home.
Well, if I could just add, on the special permit and recording plans.
Mhm.
That's correct. I very rarely see a plan recorded with a special permit decision. You tend to reference them and keep them on file somewhere with, the town clerk or the planning board, et cetera. And the only time you might see it if it involves an easement or there's some discernible part of the land it's important to record, but generally.
Do you know if they're buying or leasing this land?
Excuse me?
Are you privy, or your client, are they going to lease the land, rent the land, or buy the land?
Purchase.
Pardon me?
Purchase. As I understand it.
Said that somewhere. One of the documents said purchase.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
So I got a call maybe a week ago from Christine Aubry. You know who Christine Aubry is?
Yeah.
I know. Has she talked to you about this?
Well,
Recently, the soul is proposed. She's wondering if the property on School Street or Dwight Street or whatever we've been talking with her about.
Bridge Street.
Bridge Street.
Off
yeah.
Jericho Road.
Yeah, off Jericho Road. Right. That part, she's got somebody that might be interested in solar there. And I said, I have no idea if that's a place that could fly or not fly.
Well, I think the issue there,
That's a good ag line.
it was, well, see, the thing is, what we have to remember is that you can build on that.
Right.
And if you have a choice between solar and houses, I'd rather see solar because they're gone in 20 years.
Right.
But you have a lot of neighbors there. And if you think about what happened when Swazlowski's proposed
behind me,
behind you, and the brouhaha over that,
right.
I don't necessarily, I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that being solar myself if the alternative is a bunch of houses back there, which is what
she was originally talking about.
Well, no, the project that they were talking about that Steph and I reviewed with Jonathan Wright would have been a conservation subdivision, and quite a bit of it would have been protected for farming.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what most developers are going to do out there. In fact, that's not what I think the owners are expecting. They're sort of expecting someone to buy that and put it in a subdivision.
Right.
Yep. And so if
A steep price, arguably.
yeah, so if there's a choice between solar field and a subdivision, I'd vote for the solar field myself.
That was my uninformed opinion to her.
Yeah.
That relatively speaking, because we've heard people talk about wanting to develop, we've heard her talk about wanting to do development back there
Right.
or
Been for
represent.
sale for a while.
And it's been for sale. So I mean, I think that it's something, that's a parcel we need to be prepared for something to be happening to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the owners probably will sit on it forever if they were not getting a proposal as subdivision and we're getting a proposal as solar field, even if it's a 20-year rental.
Right.
I mean, that would, a 20-year lease on that property would return a decent amount of money on a continuing basis to the owners instead of still sitting and hoping somebody buys it for a development.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I understand the reasoning obviously behind having solar over development. Like I
Right.
totally intellectually agree with that. However, we say 20 years, but if a big multi-conglomerate power company owns this, or which is then sold to a holding company
Entergy,
or
right,
whatever, like, will that ever actually not be solar, or will it ever?
Well, but if it ever came out, if indeed that may be true, but we don't bulldoze houses to put in farm ground. So if you put in a house, I mean, we've got houses in Hatfield that have been here for 300 years.
Right, people have like emotional connections and stuff
Yeah,
with them.
and
They're not going
whereas
through the solar company.
so it may not be 20 years, it might be 40 years, but if it ever then gets decommissioned, it's easy to pull out, whereas you're not going to pull out houses that have been
I
there for
agree.
40 years.
Right.
I just don't like the
Yeah.
assumption that it'll be gone in 20 years,
Yeah.
because I don't think that that's necessarily the case. I feel like when we approve a solar array, it'll be there
Right.
in perpetuity as long as we need solar. And that's because it's already approved. It's easy to just keep it solar. So
Right. That may be, and yes, I agree with you. That could very well be the case. But if it ever comes to the point where agriculture is so needed and so valuable that we're pulling out solar fields, we're going to do that long before we take down houses.
Right.
no, correct. Yeah. Any other discussion updates?
I have, actually, so I got a phone call from Bernie Simorowski. I think he thought I was still the planning board chair. He just wanted us to know if we saw activity out on their field there in North Hatfield or along River Road there or Main Street. They are putting up some temporary, a couple hoop houses, and they're putting in like a reefer truck, temporary reefer truck thing to store things in.
Yeah, I saw the fence go up. The fence is up now.
What kind of a reefer truck is that? Are you referring to a refrigerated truck?
Yeah,
Or
right.
The other
right.
kind of reefer truck?
Yeah, right. A truck, truck to hold reefer in. No, you know what I mean, like the back of a refrigerated truck, but all temporary structures.
Uh-huh.
Hey, I need to get going.
Yep.
I need to go eat dinner.
We need
Yeah.
to approve the minutes, and then we
So
can.
yeah, we have the minutes, and then our next meeting is October 4th.
I know Gerard sent the minutes out yesterday. Maybe after some of you picked up your packets, I was able to review them, and I didn't see it.
I did.
Okay.
The first, I'm confused on Amy Start on South Street. I'd like to address the board. She has some question concerning a paper street.
What is a paper street?
You-
I think it was a contested right away or
yeah,
right away
it's
access.
It's an easement or a right of
Easement.
way.
Yeah.
Right. She described it as a paper, like a street on paper, if you remember. She said it.
Oh, that's what, yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember that.
Right.
I think she meant a right of way
Yeah.
and an easement. So
Right.
I would like to change that to easement / right of way.
Okay.
This was August meeting?
The August meeting, yeah.
All right.
And then continuing on the hearing, it's just a typo. Thayers will be ready for the meeting until September 1st. Will be for the meeting.
On September.
Just strike until.
Mhm.
And then top of the page of the second page, looking at an alteration, looking to get an alteration. It's just a typo, looking to get an alteration of those
Oh, yeah.
existing non-conforming use. I'll give you my notes when I'm done. And then on, down to discussion on 164 West Street. Doug Lee is looking to purchase it should be self-storage,
Mhm.
not self-storage. And then, is it CPC or CPA?
It's the CPC is the committee.
It's
Okay.
CPC, Community Preservation Committee.
That's it.
All right. Motion to approve the minutes with Paul's amendments.
Amendments? I make that motion. Actually, only the three of us can vote on this.
Yeah, I can't vote.
Yeah, I make that motion.
Second.
It.
Okay.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah. Jimmy, you were not
Can't
present.
vote.
Oh, I can't vote.
You were
Okay.
absent.
Mhm.
So I'll give you these and you can just see my notes. It's a couple typos, that's it.
Motion to adjourn.
Make the motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at
Okay.
8:39.